I just want to share a story with you. Now, as a fourth-year medical student, I had the unique opportunity of attending Johns Hopkins University Hospital. And this was an away rotation from the small school, which I was, as they mentioned, the Medical College of Ohio. And as I entered Johns Hopkins, on the wall to the left, if you can imagine, the entire wall was a mural of Dr. Ben Carson. And the caption read, "The nation's leading neurosurgeon." Immediately, I was thrilled. Because I don't know if you know the story of Dr. Carson, but Dr. Carson, as this country's leading neurosurgeon, as a child, was labeled learning disabled. So his mother did what she thought was the right thing to do for this young African-American child. And she said, "You know what, Ben? Each week you're going to write me a book report." And so he did. He obeyed his mother. He took the task very seriously. And that thirst for learning progressed, and it stimulated his appetite for knowledge. And we know him today as this country's leading neurosurgeon. The very interesting thing was he would later learn that his mother couldn't even read the book reports that she requested. She may have had a deficit in her reading capabilities, but she knew how to cultivate greatness. So as I entered the building, I felt good. My first real live encounter with Dr. Carson would be a surgical strategic team meeting. So what it was before us was a young 12-year-old female from Brazil. She had a right-sided facial weakness. And so together we had the neurosurgical team, our team, the head and neck surgery team. And as we looked a little further, we did some x-rays. And the x-rays revealed that she had a tumor which started in the back of the brain and was moving its way forward, ultimately landing in her sinus. So they decided we need to do a tag team approach. And we were going to start with Dr. Carson. So needless to say, you know me, I got up early. My team was the finale, but I got up to see the maestro at work. As I walked into the OR that day, imagine with me, the lights are dimly lit. Classical music is playing in the background, and Dr. Carson is at the head of the table, quieting himself, just saying a little prayer. As he began to work, we hovered, as medical students do, we just sort of hovered over the back of him. As he gently moved the brain to the left, you could see the tumor very easily. And we watched him work methodically and meticulously, just ever so gently, removing this tumor from this facial nerve of this 12-year-old girl. He summoned us closer. He said, let me tell you something. He said, this nerve doesn't appear invaded. I think it was the pressure and the pathology on the nerve that created the paralysis. But I think when we get this out of the way, we may get more movement. And I said to myself, this is a great day. We finished the operation, we did our part, and it was an awesome day. I left Johns Hopkins that day standing a little taller, back a little straighter, because you know what Dr. King says, you got to be careful when a Negro straightens his or her back, because they're going somewhere. They can't ride you if your back's not bent. So taking that in mind, I bring to you that story not because of the adoration that I have for Dr. Carson, but because I think the take-home message of that day is the message of this nation today. We're in a nation of paralysis. The pathology is on the inside, and I believe it starts at the top. So I'm thinking, we're going to need a tag team approach. And I think we got the tag team being sworn in for the second time. So here's what we got. We've got President Barack Obama working it on the inside. We've got his sidekick, the attorney, and our favorite son, Joseph Biden. Doing the tag team approach approach to eradicate the pathology on the inside. Now, this is a great day because in a few hours we will leave here and we will all witness history for the second time. And it's awesome because today is Martin Luther King Day. So you're swearing in the ultimate tag team on Martin Luther King Day, on whose shoulders they stand. So imagine, as you will, in a few short hours, you've got the president on the pulpit, and in the backdrop, you've got the Lincoln Memorial, and within an eye shot, you've got the newly erected Martin Luther King Memorial. It's an awesome scene. And many of us are just hopeful that President Obama will remember fondly Dr. King on this day. And I got a hunch he will. I think he'll stick, though, if you don't mind my saying, with the Dr. King of the early 1960s. So we're going to go with the nonviolent, Nobel Prize winning, I Have a Dream Dr. King. Because that's the one that this nation finds more palatable, and that is this nation's hero. But if he just makes a reference to the drum major for justice and the drum major for peace, I think security better put their earpiece in. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when Dr. King talked about being the drum major for justice, his reference was the drum major instinct. And what he spoke about was the arrogance of this nation that by any means necessary, we will be first at all things. So he felt like the moral compass of this nation was declining. And I think you will agree. Because if you would rather spend billions on an unjust war and just $53 a day at that time on education, you've lost your way. Yes. If you are going to put soldiers together, black, white, brown, Latino, Asian, together on the battlefield in a country where you have no business being, but yet they can't sit together in the classrooms in the homeland, then you've got a problem. You've lost your way. So I don't think he's going to bring up the drum major for justice, and I don't think we should be too upset about that. But as I was reading it, as a person, I'm born in 1964, so I come to simply say thank you. It's been quite easy for me, but you can't reminisce on this kind of material and think to yourself, what is going on? Why can't we move anything? Katrina, no movement. Trayvon Martin, no movement. Public education, no movement. Homelessness, foreclosure, no movement. And the question as a healthcare professional that I have, is it pathology on the inside, or perhaps because I'm a graduate of Tuskegee University, is there a drug that we're being given that creates this paralysis? So Dr. Scantleberry is here. She knows the deal. So what I did was I dug a little deeper. And the good news is, folks, I think I found the drug. The drug is called IDC. Now, you guys have heard of PCP. You've heard of LSD. You may have heard of ecstasy. But I'm here to tell you about a new drug. It's called IDC. Now, how does this IDC work? Let me tell you, it works a little differently in children than in adults. So let's start with the children, the teenagers, the early young adults. There's an increased sense of entitlement when taking this drug. And you may have seen that. Many of you may have not, but you may have seen that. It kind of slowly erases ancestral history, creating a sense of confusion, leading to cowardly acts. You may have seen that. And here's what's interesting about it. It will increase the motility in your fingers and wrists while paralyzing your legs and your feet. It's got to be. But increasing the mobility of your hands and wrists while decreasing the mobility of your legs and feet. Now, in my age group, it will give you a false sense of security and hope. And there seems to be an increased rate in diabetics and those with hypertension, those with cardiac disease, and anyone suffering from obesity. Not anyone in this room. Now, what's interesting is in my mom's age group, the drug is rendered ineffective. I'm thinking, why on earth is this drug ineffective in 65 and up? Well, there seems to be so much ancestral data that it sort of decreases the activity and renders the drug insufficient, let's just say. So the question is, how does the drug get in? Who designed this drug? Where does this thing come from? Well, my understanding is, as I read along, that this drug is transmitted through apple products. And I'm thinking applesauce, apple juice, green apples, red apples, what's there clear of? Well, the bad news is it's the iPod, it's the iPad, it's the iPhone 125, the iPod. Bad news, Daryl, they're working on the Samsung and the Kindle and the Wii. And for those of you who have a Nook, it seems like it may be transmitted through the Nook. So in its most generic form, what is this IDC that has this nation paralyzed? IDC is quite simply this: I don't care. We got a problem. We've got a problem. But the good news is there is a reversal agent. That reversal agent is prayer and praise. Lastly, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to sit down because we got a president being sworn in just a few hours. On my 16th birthday, we buried my grandfather. 4 days prior, he was preaching a sermon, or attempting to preach a sermon at Union Baptist Church. Papa rose from his seat, uttered just a few words, had a massive heart attack, and died. That day brought me to this day, because that sense of hopelessness and helplessness I never wanted to feel again. But there is something to be said for those who died doing exactly what they're called to do. So my grandfather's last words were, and it goes like this, and I'm going to take the liberty to finish. If I can help somebody as I travel along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody he's traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. Until justice rolls like water and righteousness like a mighty stream, we cannot tweet, text, email, blog our way out of this crisis. We must stand up with prayer and praise in our heart and move this country to a better place. Thank you, and happy Washington.